Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, I invite you to travel far back in time, to a world of marble temples and crowded markets, of emperors and soldiers, of gods and spirits, to ancient Rome, a place not only of power and empire, but also of superstition. The Romans were practical builders, brilliant soldiers, and careful administrators, but beneath their discipline they were deeply superstitious. They believed that luck and fate ruled their lives. They thought that small gestures, tiny accidents, and even birds in the sky could shape the course of their destiny. And so they created rules. Rules about salt, about doors, about birds, about marriage, about food, about whistles. Some were simple, some were strange. All were followed with care for fear of angering unseen forces. This, then, is a boring history sleep story. It is not meant to excite you. It is meant to carry you gently into the past, to lull you with details, to guide you into sleep. So close your eyes, breathe slowly, and imagine yourself in the streets of Rome centuries ago, where superstition was everywhere, and where even a single grain of salt could bring worry. In the Roman world, salt was precious. It was not only a seasoning, it was a treasure. It preserved food. It paid soldiers. The word salary itself comes from salarium, money given for salt. To spill salt, then, was no small thing. Imagine a Roman table, a wooden surface, perhaps covered with cloth, bowls of olives, loaves of bread, a small dish of salt carefully placed. Guests gather. The family reclines, as was their custom, upon couches around the table. A servant brings wine. The conversation is soft, the atmosphere calm. Now imagine the dish tips. A little salt scatters across the table, onto the floor. The sound is small, the accident is minor, but the reaction, a pause, a silence, a glance exchanged. For the Romans believed that spilled salt was an omen. It was a sign of misfortune, of quarrels to come, of trouble in the household. The salt, so valuable, so necessary, wasted upon the floor, symbolized a loss of luck. To them, it was not just food falling, it was harmony breaking. And so people grew careful. A Roman mother might warn her children, "Do not spill the salt." A Roman guest might murmur a small prayer if the grain scattered. Some would even pinch the spilled salt and toss it over their left shoulder to drive away evil spirits that might lurk nearby. Why the left shoulder? Because in Latin, the word for left, sinister, also meant unlucky, ominous, evil. To cast salt over the left shoulder was to blind the demons thought to wait there. In time, this habit survived across centuries, across cultures, and even today, some people still toss salt over the shoulder without even knowing that the Romans once did the same. But the superstition went deeper still. The Romans believed that salt was tied to loyalty and friendship. To share the salt was to seal trust. To spill it, then, could be to break that trust. Perhaps that is why in later centuries artists painted Judas Iscariot, the betrayer, knocking over a bowl of salt at the Last Supper, a symbol of betrayal carried from Roman belief into Christian art. Think now of the detail. A small grain, white, shining, dropping from the dish to the floor. Such a tiny thing, and yet to the Romans filled with meaning. How careful they were, how watchful, how anxious always for signs of fortune and fate. And as you picture this, imagine the quiet rhythm of a Roman household, the faint crackle of lamps burning oil, the clink of pottery, the soft murmur of voices, and in the corner of the table a little dish of salt watched carefully, guarded closely, never to be spilled. A detail, a ritual, a superstition, and in it a glimpse of Rome not as an empire of armies and emperors, but as a place of ordinary people quietly fearful of luck.
In ancient Rome, meals were more than nourishment. They were rituals, filled with gestures and customs that carried meaning. Picture, if you will, a Roman table once again. Bread, olives, cheese, figs, and perhaps roasted meat sit upon clay dishes. Cups of wine stand ready. The family reclines upon couches, leaning on their elbows, as was their custom. Now imagine a piece of bread slips from the hand of a child, or perhaps an olive tumbles from a bowl, rolling gently to the edge, and then falls, landing softly upon the floor. In our world, someone might simply laugh, pick it up, and brush it off, but not in Rome. To them, fallen food was dangerous. The Romans believed that food which left the table, food which fell to the ground, no longer belonged to the living. It was claimed by the spirits. It was given to the dead. The table was sacred. It was a boundary, a place where mortals ate under the blessing of household gods, the Lares and Penates. But the floor, that was the realm of others, spirits, shadows, and the unseen. To retrieve food from there was to invite those spirits back into the household. And so, when something fell, it was left. Even a small crumb of bread might be regarded with caution. Parents warned children, "Leave it, it is not for you." Guests looked away politely, pretending not to notice. Think of the imagery. A fig rolls from the table, comes to rest by the foot of a couch, ignored. A loaf tilts, a slice slides to the ground, and no one bends to rescue it. The floor becomes a place of offering, a silent gift to the shades of the underworld. The belief tied into Roman ideas of fate and exchange. The gods, the spirits, the dead, all must be respected. They too must have their share. To deny them, to snatch food back, was to disrupt the balance. And so, a household might let food accumulate near the legs of the table, only to be swept away later. But in those moments, each piece was more than waste. It was a token, a sign, an acknowledgement of another realm. Modern ears may find it strange, but consider how careful it made the Romans. Each meal was not just eating, it was participating in a cosmic order, where even the accident of dropping food became part of ritual. As you imagine this, let the details slow you. The crackle of oil lamps, the gentle voices of family, the soft fall of bread upon the floor, and then Silence. No one picks it up. No one disturbs the offering. It remains where it fell until the spirits are satisfied. In this way, superstition shaped even the simplest act. Even the accident of gravity became a moment of reverence. The Romans, so practical in building aqueducts, roads, and armies, were at the same time profoundly concerned with luck. They believed the world was full of forces, some benevolent, some malevolent, that could touch daily life at any moment. To guard against these unseen influences, they carried charms, amulets, talismans. Consider the bulla, a small locket given to Roman children, especially boys, at birth. Inside might be placed protective items, herbs, small figures, or magical inscriptions. The bulla was worn around the neck, close to the heart. It was thought to shield the child from envy, from curses, from the evil eye. Think of a young Roman boy running in the courtyard, his bulla bouncing lightly against his chest. To him, it was not decoration, it was safety. Adults, too, wore charms. Soldiers often carried amulets into battle, small figurines of gods, or simple stones believed to hold power. Merchants placed charms in their shops to invite customers and ward off thieves. Women wore rings inscribed with magical formulas, protecting them during childbirth or travel. Superstition found its way into jewelry, into clothing, even into graffiti carved upon walls. Words of luck, symbols of fortune, small signs repeated endlessly. And then there were images. The phallus, for example, was believed to be a powerful charm against evil. Strange to us, perhaps, but to the Romans it was common. They painted it on walls, carved it into pendants, even placed it on wind chimes called tintinnabula. The sound of the chime, combined with the image, was thought to drive away misfortune. Imagine walking a Roman street. You see doorways decorated with charms, shops displaying talismans, children wearing bullae. Everywhere, small objects of protection. The city itself, a web of amulets, all whispering to unseen powers, protect us, guard us, let fortune be kind. There were also inscriptions, words scratched onto tablets, rolled into tiny scrolls, hidden within cases of bronze or silver. These were charms against illness, against betrayal, against the malice of neighbors. For the Romans did not trust fate alone. They acted. They armed themselves not with weapons only, but with symbols. Each person, from senator to slave, believed that luck could be carried, worn, and invoked. And so the superstition of amulets was universal. Children, women, men, soldiers, merchants, all clung to small objects of comfort. Picture, if you can, a Roman soldier preparing for war, his sword at his side, his shield polished, and around his neck a charm, a piece of bronze, a small stone, something to whisper to the gods on his behalf, something to hold back fate, if only for a moment. This was the Roman way, strong in arms, but never without superstition.
The Romans lived in a world filled with horses. Horses carried their soldiers. Horses pulled their carts. Horses thundered through the streets of Rome, their hooves striking the stones with a steady rhythm. And from those hooves came something curious, the horseshoe. Today, many cultures still hang a horseshoe for luck, above the door, on the wall, a symbol of protection. But the custom, in part, can be traced back to Rome. For the Romans, iron itself was powerful, hard, enduring, shaped by fire. Iron was seen as a substance that could repel spirits. To place iron at a threshold was to set a guard against the unseen. Now imagine a worn horseshoe fallen upon the road, its curve shaped like a crescent, its surface scratched from use. A roan traveler might see it and stoop to pick it up, not because it could be reused, though sometimes it could, but because it was lucky. The crescent shape was sacred, tied to the moon, to cycles of fortune. The iron was strong, a barrier against evil, and the horse itself, noble and powerful, carried associations of strength. So the horseshoe became a charm, hung above doorways, placed upon walls, a token of safety, a promise of fortune. But there were details. The direction mattered. Some said the curve must point upward, like a cup, to catch luck. Others believed it must point downward, pouring luck into the home. In Rome, interpretations varied, but always the belief was strong. Think of a Roman doorway, a lintel of stone. Beside it, painted charms, carved figures, offerings to the household gods, and above it, perhaps, nailed into the wood, a simple horseshoe, rusted, plain, but filled with meaning. Guests entering would see it. Some might touch it. Some might murmur a quiet word, and in their hearts they felt safer. This was Rome, not only of legions and laws, but of small objects of comfort. Even a worn-off horseshoe, shaped by chance, carried power. And as you imagine it now, see the glow of lamplight against iron. Hear the faint echo of hooves on stone. Feel the stillness of a Roman night, with a household sleeping under the watchful curve of a charm. Marriage was sacred to the Romans, a union not only of two people, but of two families, a ceremony filled with rites, prayers, and omens. But timing mattered, and 1 month above all was avoided: May. In modern times, May is spring, blossoms, warmth, beginnings. But to the Romans, May was the month of the dead. It was dedicated to Lemuria, a festival of restless spirits. During Lemuria, Romans believed that the ghosts of the unquiet dead returned to wander. Families offered beans to appease them. Rituals were performed to drive them away. To marry in May, then, was to invite disaster. It was to bind new life to a time of death, a contradiction, an insult to the spirits. And so, May weddings were shunned. Families chose June, a month sacred to Juno, goddess of marriage and childbirth. June was lucky, May was cursed. Imagine the warnings whispered,
Do not marry in May. It is the month of shadows. It is the month of silence. Wait, and fortune will bless you. A young couple, eager, might find their families stern. A father might say, better to wait a month than risk a lifetime of misfortune. And so they did. The superstition shaped the calendar of love. Priests refused May weddings. Neighbors gossiped about those who ignored the rule. Brides avoided even engagement ceremonies in that month. And the belief endured, even in later centuries. Long after Rome had fallen, echoes remained. Medieval Europe, too, whispered that May was unlucky for marriage. Even today, in some places, the old warning lingers. Marry in May, rue the day. Think of the detail. A Roman calendar carved in stone, its days marked. Festivals of gods, markets, holidays, rituals. And upon the column for May, the shadow of the dead. No garlands, no weddings, no joyful unions, only offerings for ghosts. And as you imagine it now, see the glow of lamplight against iron. Hear the faint echo of hooves on stone. Feel the stillness of a Roman night, with a household sleeping under the watchful curve of a charm.
The Romans believed the gods spoke, not in voices, not in thunder, not in dreams alone, but in birds. They practiced auspicia, the reading of omens through the flight and cries of birds. Priests, known as augurs, stood in open fields, gazing upward, waiting for wings in the sky. Imagine a clear Roman morning, the air still cool, the sun just rising above tiled roofs. An augur stands with staff in hand. He marks the sky into sections, invisible lines across the horizon. He waits. A crow caws from the left. An owl hoots in the distance. A hawk circles high, steady and swift. Each sound, each movement, each direction, meaning. Left was often sinister, unlucky. Right was fortunate. The kind of bird mattered too. A raven, harsh and dark, might foretell trouble. A dove, gentle and white, might promise peace. Even emperors obeyed. Before battles, before laws, before journeys, they sought the augurs. Shall we march? Shall we stay? What do the birds say? And the augurs, with solemn faces, gave their verdicts. But it was not only priests. Ordinary Romans, too, watched birds. Farmers noted the swallows in spring. Travelers watched the flights of geese. Housewives listened for the call of owls near their rooftops, fearing death's approach. Birds filled their days with signs. The flutter of wings could sway decisions. A single call could change fate. Picture a Roman family at breakfast, bread upon the table, figs in a bowl. Suddenly, outside, a raven cries 3 times. The father pauses. He frowns. He decides to delay his journey. He believes the bird has spoken. Superstition became part of governance, part of routine, part of life. The empire might stretch across seas, but even emperors looked skyward, waiting for wings. And so, the Romans lived not only by laws, but by flight. Not only by reason, but by feathers. Not only by words,
but by caws and songs in the air. The Romans built their houses with care. Courtyards, atriums, tiled floors, painted walls. But one part of the house carried special power: the door. The door was not simply wood and hinges. It was a threshold, a boundary between inside and outside, between family and stranger, between safety and danger. The Romans believed doors were guarded by spirits: the Lares, household guardians, and Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings, who looked both forward and back. To cross a door was to enter a sacred passage. One did not step carelessly. When leaving, a Roman might touch the doorpost, murmuring a brief prayer. When returning, he might do the same. Guests entering often placed a hand on the threshold in respect. The door was decorated, wreaths hung upon it, charms nailed above, perhaps even a horseshoe, as we have seen. Offerings might be placed at its base. It was said that to stumble upon entering was unlucky. To trip across a threshold was a bad omen, a sign that the household spirits disapproved. And so care was taken with every step. Brides, in particular, were carried across to avoid mishap. Picture a Roman home at dusk, lamps glowing within, the door carved with patterns. A father pauses before stepping inside. His hand rests upon the post. He whispers words too soft to hear. Only then does he enter. The threshold was more than wood. It was a line between worlds. And to the Romans, lines must be respected. There is a sound, a simple sound, the whistling of lips. Light, playful, cheerful. But in Rome, it was not so cheerful. It was dangerous. The Romans believed to whistle in a house was to summon spirits, evil ones, shadows waiting outside, drawn by the sound. The whistle pierced the air, broke the sacred silence of the home, and opened a path for misfortune. Children might whistle without thought, and mothers would hush them quickly. Not here, not in the house. Men might whistle at work, but not at the hearth. The hearth was sacred, watched by Vesta, goddess of fire. To disturb it with such sound was to invite ruin. Imagine a quiet Roman evening, the family gathered by the lamp, the father reading aloud, the mother weaving. A child, bored, purses his lips, lets out a tune. At once, the mother's hand rises, her eyes widen. No, the sound fades. Silence returns. The home was safety. The home was order. The whistle was intrusion. To Romans, it was no small thing. Even outside, some avoided it, for the whistle was also associated with calling the wind, stirring chaos. Sailors, in particular, feared it. A whistle upon a ship could anger the sea, invite storms. So, the habit was stilled, lips closed, silence preferred. Better safe than sorry. And so, you have walked through Rome. Not the Rome of marble arches and roaring crowds, but the Rome of small gestures, of spilled salt, of fallen bread, of charms and amulets, of horseshoes and unlucky months, of birds in the sky, of doors and thresholds, of silence in the home. This was the Rome of superstition, a Rome of caution, a Rome where every detail, every sound, every object held meaning. And now, as you drift into sleep, let these details fade away.
See the grains of salt fall slowly. See the fig rolling to the floor. Hear the soft flutter of wings above. Imagine the glow of a doorway, the hush of a quiet house, the stillness of a Roman night. History, boring and slow, becomes your lullaby. The Romans, long gone, leave only their whispers, and those whispers carry you gently into rest. Good night. Good night.